So a few more notes about inflation before we get into the calculation of it. Remember that inflation is measured against a market basket based on the discussion that we had. We can't say that inflation is going to be affecting one particular good, but in the United States, we focus in on the vast majority of goods and services within a market basket. And this market basket is exactly what the BLS, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is going to go ahead and track. They have a lot of data. They track this market basket of goods and services using surveys, and this is exactly what the average American is going to buy on a monthly basis. So they track the prices of all these goods. They took a look at apples, bananas, coffee, drugs, eggs. They basically say this is the average market basket that you and I buy on a monthly basis, and they track the prices of every single one of these goods. And as we notice, the prices of some goods may go up. So for apples, for coffee, for drugs, they go up. But for other goods, they may go down. So for bananas and eggs, they're going down. But overall, we do notice that if we take a look at the average market basket of these goods and services, the price level tends to increase, saying that, hey, we have inflation for this market basket. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few concepts and a few different ideas of inflation itself. So what exactly is a price level, and what exactly is a price index, just to go ahead and start us off. So here, we notice that the price level of this market basket of goods and services is going to increase, but what exactly is the price level? So the price level is exactly what we are interested in solving for. It's the absolute value of a price index. So the absolute value of a price index, So basically, this is the one singular number. It tells us exactly what we are interested in solving for. And based on this number, we can tell exactly what's happening to the prices of these goods and services, these market basket of goods and services within the United States or within a country. Are they increasing, decreasing, or staying consistent over a period of time? What exactly is the price index is the next question that you guys might have. That is the second concept that we take a look at, the price index. And the price index is exactly how we measure this price level, the different measures of price. So different measures of price. Different measures of price. It's the manner in which we calculate out the price level. So manner in which the price levels are determined. Price levels are determined. And there are three different price indices that we focus in on. We have the CPI, we have the PPI, and the GDP deflator. So three different price indices, and they all give us a different measure of the price level and affect a different measure of inflation, but they're going to be all very closely related to one another. The three different price indices that we just mentioned, the CPI, it measures the retail price level. And this is exactly the most common measure of inflation that the BLS is going to report. So anytime we talk about inflation, we typically are talking about the CPI right here. It takes a look at the things that you and I buy, that market basket of goods and services on the consumer level. The second measure of inflation is the PPI, or the Producer Price Index, which measures wholesale prices. We don't focus too much on the PPI, but it's going to be measured in the same way as the CPI. It just focuses in on the producers. So what is the market basket of goods and services on the producer side? Finally, number three is just a combination of 1 and 2, which is the GDP deflator. And it's the broadest measure of inflation that we have because it measures all the average price of all items in GDP. So CIG, net exports, it takes a look at all the goods, all the services that we produce within a particular time period with the GDP deflator. We'll focus in on the CPI and the GDP deflator, but also make a few notes about the PPI as well. So one final thing that we need to talk about inflation is what happens if we don't actually have a positive rate of inflation. What happens if we have a negative rate of inflation? So we've only been talking about having a positive rate of inflation. And there are a few different ranges of inflation that we can go ahead and take a look at as well. We have disinflation and deflation in this instance. So with disinflation, this is a reduction in the rate of inflation, where prices are going to rise at a decreasing pace. So the major difference between inflation and disinflation is with inflation, we focus in on one particular time period. With disinflation, we focus in on over a period of time periods. So we just can't take a look at 1 month, we just can't take a look at 1 year, we need to take a look at a few months or a few years in order to say whether or not we have disinflation. So here, disinflation is where we still have a positive rate of inflation, but it's decreasing over this period of time. So here, take a look at disinflation. Disinflation. So as we've already mentioned, disinflation is over a period of time where we have positive inflation rates, but it's going to be decreasing over this time period. So suppose that I tell you that inflation is 5% today. Inflation is 5% today, but 4% the next year, 4% next year, and then maybe say 1% the following year, and 1% the following year. This would be indicative of disinflation. We have positive rates of inflation, but they're declining over a period of time, 5 to 4, all the way down to 1%. In order to say if we have inflation, we just need to go ahead and take a look at one particular year. So if we just say that inflation is 5% today, we would say, hey, this is inflation. If inflation is 4% today, that is inflation because we only focus in on one particular year. With disinflation, we need more time periods. So be cognizant of that. Deflation, on the other hand, is just the opposite of inflation, where we have a decline in the price level, where prices on average are going to fall. So with deflation, we're going to notice that this is where our inflation rates turn negative. So deflation, this is where we notice that inflation rates are negative. When inflation rates are negative. So if inflation is negative 3% today, negative 5% today, negative 0.1%, doesn't really matter the magnitude. As long as it's negative, we say that we are in deflation. So far we have 3 different ranges of inflation. We have inflation, which is a positive rate of inflation. We have deflation, which is a negative rate of inflation, and disinflation, where inflation is still positive, but it's declining over time. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with this question right here. So just for a little bit of discussion. Do you think that deflation is good or bad for the economy? So if too much inflation was bad for the economy, do you think deflation is good for the economy? And the answer for this is a little bit more complex, but in general, most countries would like to go ahead and avoid any type of deflation because it creates some type of deflationary spiral that can be very, very hard to get out of. So go ahead and use this example right here. Suppose that we are in deflation, so you know for sure that prices are going to be declining day after day after day. So suppose that you want to go ahead and buy some groceries today, but you know that deflation is going to happen. Are you going to go ahead and buy groceries today, or are you going to wait until tomorrow when prices are going to be lower? And if you're the rational consumer, you're going to go ahead and wait until tomorrow in order to take advantage of the lower prices. So you wait until tomorrow to buy groceries. So the next day comes in and you need to go ahead and buy groceries, but still deflation is happening. Do you want to go ahead and buy groceries then, or wait another day in order to take advantage of the lower prices? And once again, you're probably going to want to go ahead and wait because prices are lower. And this is exactly why deflation can be very detrimental and very harmful for any country, because it creates a spiral where consumers are actually not going out and buying anything. And if we don't have a lot of consumption, that creates an economy that contracts at a very, very rapid pace. And this is something that Japan went through in the 90s, and they're still feeling the effects of that today with their lost decade, where they went through a deflationary spiral where prices were declining very, very rapidly over a period of time. So with this, we notice that there's going to be a certain range of inflation that's going to be healthy for the economy. Too high of an inflation rate, that's bad for the economy. Too low of an inflation rate where we hit deflation, that's also bad for the economy. So the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, has a range of inflation, typically around 2 to 4%, which is going to be very, very healthy for the economy. And they're going to be conducting some type of monetary policy to ensure that we are within this range of inflation. So 2 to 4%, that is the range that the United States would like to operate at in order to maintain some semblance of stability within the economy. So a little bit of food for thought for you in that realm of inflation, deflation, and disinflation. We're going to go ahead and focus in on the CPI and the calculation of that market basket of goods and services in that next video. I'll see you guys there.